It's a Breath of the Wild clone, but it's also not a Breath of the Wild clone. It's an MMO, but it's also not an MMO. It's a mobile game, but it's also not a mobile game. It's Genshin Impact, or Genshin Impact.
It might be a soft J. I'm not sure, but...
In all seriousness, this game is freaking awesome, so let's talk about it. I'm going to be calling it Genshin Impact from here on out. I assume that's how it's pronounced. If I'm wrong, then too bad, so sad, I'll get it right next time. So what is Genshin Impact? Well, that's a really tricky question. When it was first shown off at whatever gaming event it was, E3 maybe, people were like, oh, a Breath of the Wild clone, but hey, it does look really damn beautiful. I became incredibly confused shortly afterwards though when it was revealed that it was going to be a free-to-play mobile game that was also coming to PC. It pretty much killed any interest I had in it. I assumed that what we were seeing in the trailer was just not going to be representative of the actual game. Like, these were the cutscenes, sure, but then it would be a predictable, simplistic mobile game. Oh boy, was I wrong. Well, mostly. I say mostly because this game definitely has some sort of identity crisis. Sometimes it feels like a single-player RPG, sometimes it feels like an MMO, and sometimes it feels like a free-to-play mobile game. And at least early on, sometimes it does feel like Breath of the Wild. Despite this identity crisis though, it is a really fun game, a far deeper experience than I ever could have imagined, and visually just so damn gorgeous. It didn't grab me right away. In fact, my first session was an hour and a half, and I was ready to start writing a very meh first impressions script. Initially, the combat felt overly simplistic, the story starts quite basic, and the way the first hour or so progresses makes it feel a bit like baby's first MMO, but without the actual MMO. The second time I logged in though, well, I played for nearly 5 hours straight. I couldn't tear myself away from it, and for a while, I wasn't sure why. If you want the answer though, I've got 3 words for you. The gameplay loop. Think of every addictive gameplay loop from almost every kind of game you've ever played, and then mash them all together into one mega gameplay loop conglomerate, and you have Genshin Impact. It has an exploration-focused, RPG-leveling, goal-based, MMO, mobile game, upgrade and enhancement-centric gameplay loop backed up by multiple main story quest chains you can tackle all at once or one at a time, and a huge number of side quests and optional tasks and activities. Sometimes a game will keep you hooked by giving you that next upgrade to strive for. Sometimes they'll give you daily activities or achievements to chase, and sometimes the gameplay and story are enough to keep you playing on their own, but Genshin Impact has all of these things and more. I have played for around 20 hours now, and I am always, at all times, fixated on achieving multiple different goals, some of them big, some of them small. I'm always looking for the next monument to reveal more of the gargantuan map. I'm always looking for the collectible offerings scattered throughout the world that let you upgrade those monuments. I'm always working on upgrading my characters and gear. I'm always finding a new puzzle or activity while I'm out exploring that I feel compelled to complete. I'm always following at least one major questline. I'm always mindful of the game's inbuilt achievements and how I'm going to complete them for the rewards, and it just goes on and on. It's endless. It's why I talked about an identity crisis earlier. There is just so much to think about at any given moment. There is so much going on all the time. Even the grind for adventurer ranks barely feels like a grind because you are doing so many different things in a single play session. It is such a satisfying game to play, you always feel like you're achieving something. The Breath of the Wild similarities are really only skin deep. It doesn't take long to realize that you definitely aren't playing a Breath of the Wild clone. The things it did provide inspiration for, specifically the art style, don't feel like straight ripoffs. The character designs and models themselves are much more distinctly JRPG than Breath of the Wild style, and honestly, it's surprising there aren't more games using a similar art style to Breath of the Wild. It's a gorgeous way to bring a game to life. There's only one thing ripped straight from Breath of the Wild that I object to, and that's the stamina bar for sprinting. It feels like they copied it over without having a clear design decision for it, like they didn't actually understand why it was in Breath of the Wild in the first place. It makes traversing this exceedingly interesting world a lot more taxing than it should be. I'm not sure if you get alternate forms of transport later on, like mounts. I certainly haven't come across any in my 20-ish hours. You can increase your stamina bar by making offerings to monuments, but it just doesn't seem like that will be enough. Now it's time to talk about the combat. It is so much fun. At first it feels like you're just hacking and slashing, but it very quickly starts introducing elemental abilities, new mechanics, and some quite deep interactions with the world itself. You have a basic attack and combo, a weapon-specific ability like an aimed shot with a bow for example, and elemental abilities. Enemies have weak spots that you can exploit and elemental weaknesses as well. You can set an enemy's shield on fire or bring out a heavy hitter to smash that shield. The way elements work though is a little hard to explain. There are basic aspects, like using a fire attack on an enemy that is made of ice, which causes that enemy to melt. But all elements interact with each other in one way or another. If there is a fire on the ground, or you shoot a fire arrow into an enemy's shield, you can use an elemental wind attack which causes that fire to spread. Special elemental finisher type moves that you need to build up a resource meter for can have even stronger interactions. On the default character you play as, that ability summons a giant tornado that carries enemies away, but use it with fire in the path and it becomes a big fire tornado. You can douse enemies with a water attack, then switch over to someone who uses electricity and watch as lightning strikes bounce from enemy to enemy following the water. You can freeze enemies and then smash them. It's just really damn fun. Your party is made up of 4 characters that you can switch on demand during combat, and you can edit your party at any time outside of combat. I've only really scratched the surface with enemies and their abilities and mechanics. I've only done a few boss type enemies so far, but they are very unique and you'll need to employ different strategies for each of them. Elemental abilities also come into play outside of combat. The world is littered with puzzles and challenges that you'll need a diverse set of elements to complete, and they can also help you with exploration itself. An ice attack can freeze water, giving you a way to traverse lakes and rivers, for example. Other than the stamina restrictions on sprinting, exploration is a joy. There is the obligatory glide mechanic, this time taking the form of a set of wings you unlock a few hours into the game. You can climb any surface just like in Breath of the Wild, and elements give you multiple creative ways to traverse the world. You'll find chests, enemy camps, monuments, landmarks, towns, dungeons, waypoints for fast travel, challenge missions, collectibles, and interesting puzzles. Sometimes simply getting to a chest you can see is a puzzle in and of itself. It might be surrounded by a powerful wind current with no cliffs or higher places nearby to jump off and glide in. But then you spot some special wind elementals that produce a burst of air when a certain number of them are collected, allowing you to use that to glide in, assuming you get that burst of air in the right place. You'll also find spirits that, when approached, will beckon you to follow them, essentially escorting them back to their shrine where they'll give you a reward. These are often used very well to coincidentally guide you to or past other interesting things, or even show you a good way to scale a mountain or to get from A to B. Most of my 5-hour playtime during my second session was spent just aimlessly exploring the world. Despite being absolutely enormous, it's also very densely packed. I feel like I've barely even seen 5% of it after 20 or so hours. The only thing that worries me about the world, the exploration, and the game itself is its very strange free-to-play model that seems out of place. You get a good range of party members covering all the elements through main story missions, but for some reason there is a character gacha where you can get alternate party members with different abilities. There's also a gacha for weapons. You do earn the currency you need to use the gacha in-game, but you will almost certainly be able to purchase it with real money as well. It's a monetization model usually reserved for mobile games, and although Genshin Impact is weirdly coming to mobile, it doesn't feel like a mobile game at all outside of the very specific mobile game aspects like the character gacha, multiple currencies, and power-up items. Being free to play in this instance though could be an absolutely amazing positive for a lot of people. You won't have to spend a dime, yet you'll get an incredibly fun experience that could easily last hundreds of hours. The thing that worries me is what the future holds. Will the story quality decline, or will the main story itself keep getting strung along for years and years without closure? Will they lock things behind paywalls or make future design decisions based more around the monetization model than the game itself? There aren't any rock-solid indications any of this will be the case, but this free-to-play model breeds uncertainty about the future, especially in a game that could have easily been a single-player RPG sold at full price. For now though, I am really looking forward to its release. I've had to stop myself playing more of the beta build so I don't complete too much, which I'll have to repeat once the game is out. And it's been really hard. I've scarcely thought about anything other than playing Genshin Impact for the past week, and that's about the biggest compliment I could ever give a game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks for the liking, subscribing, and the sharing!